Hello everyone, welcome back to my little hobby corner here. Today we're going to be talking about the northern tribes from the game Warcrow. We're going to be doing the same thing that we did for the hegemony, where we're going to be looking at all of the unit cards. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I think it's going to be up there right now. So yeah, just click that button. Fantastic. So basically the northern tribes are Vikings. They are Orc Vikings. They've joined forces with the Varunk, which are also very Viking-esque, who have kind of spirit animals that they're connected to, and they can shapeshift. They seem pretty cool. There's none in the main box, but they'll be coming in the Beyond set, so you'll be getting extras there. But we're going to be looking at the Orcs that are in the starter set today. So let's just get right in there and start having a look at how they're going to be different from the hegemony. So straight away, the line troops that we have here are the Orc Hunters. These guys, just like the hegemony Black Legion soldiers, are 20 points for a unit of 4 models. They have a slightly different move value, where the hegemony had a 3-3 move. These guys have a 3-2 move. However, their charge is a little longer with a 10, where the hegemony had a 9. So it's kind of interesting to see that these guys will move just a teeny bit slower, but as soon as they smell blood and they want to charge, that's when they start picking up speed and they get the momentum to go and attack. They each carry 2 wounds, pretty standard. Orange willpower dice, pretty standard. Also means that they could break fairly easily as well. Again, also a morale of only 1, so again they could break very easily. And again, just like the hegemony line troopers, availability of 3, so you can run 3 units of these guys in a single army, and they're very, very cheap to run. So looking at their attack, they're a pretty aggressive unit. We're rolling a red, 3 oranges, and a yellow die. You can get quite a lot of successes through that, and they also have a switch where if you get 2 specials, the target receives a vulnerable state. What that's going to do is it's going to reduce the number of shields that the opponent can use if they're carrying that state the next time you're fighting them. So they're going to be reducing a lot of the defensive ability of the enemy. So the longer they're in a combat, the more deadly they're going to kind of get and more damage they're going to do. So these guys are pretty powerful. Defense-wise, they're rolling a green and 2 blacks. Seems, okay. Nothing really special. Now, whereas the hegemony line troopers were very defensive and you could get extra shields, these guys can actually convert their shields into successes. So rather that you could just ignore your defense and just do damage back when defending against the enemy. It really highlights the fact that the Orc armies are going to be very, very aggressive armies, which is kind of to be expected because they're Orcs. Now, they only have a conquest rating of 1, so compared to the hegemony troops that had a conquest rating of 2, these guys are not as good at holding objectives. However, they do have 1, so they can hold objectives and contest them, relatively well, just not as well as the hegemony. It's going to be really interesting later when we start seeing more of the other factions to see what kind of conquest ratings they're going to be having. So I'm going to be curious to see what we see in the future. So when they do drop down to 2 or fewer models, their attack is really reduced to just a red and 2 orange. Now that's still pretty good for rolling a fair few successes, but losing 2 dice is quite a lot there. Because of that, their switch becomes a little easier to pull off, where you only need 1 special to get the vulnerable state. So I think that kind of balances it, because otherwise trying to get 2 specials when you're down to only 2 soldiers with only 3 dice is going to be just like dead on impossible almost. So I can understand why they reduced the switch requirement for this. Now on the defensive side, they're rolling a blue and a black dice. So again, they lose a lot of their defensive ability, but they still can convert their shields into successes, so you can do damage back. But you're going to start to see them really drop off really quickly, just like with the hegemony. I think this is going to be a thing with the units. As they start taking more damage and they get fewer and fewer, they're going to be more likely to be picked off and die. So keeping your units at full strength as much as possible, I think, is going to be a really important strategy in the game. Or it's a case of you sacrifice units knowing that if you lose a couple of models, they basically tend to almost useless. But I think that's reflected in the price. 20 points for 4 models is kind of where that's at. You're getting a fair few wounds to keep you going, and you're just reducing your quality as you lose models. Alright, so we're going to be having a look at their first support unit. Now, in the Hegemony, it was a medic, doctor kind of character. In this one, we've got Wisemane. Very different kind of support character here. This one is also 15 points, so it's equivalent price value. However, what we're going to see is an increased willpower, 3 wounds on this guy as well. Only availability 1. Now he's got the Fearless ability as well. I'm gonna have to check what the Fearless does actually, so I'll come back to the video later to talk about that one. Hello, Editing Zombie here. Gonna just tell you what Fearless is. Fearless basically ignores the effect of intimidating and ignores the state of frightening. We'll talk more about that later in the video. Bye-bye! So rather than this guy being a support unit that just tries to buff or protect a unit, this guy is actually just an aggressive guy. His attack by himself is a red, 2 oranges and a yellow. That's pretty good, but he can further buff that if you stress him with an extra red die and a special. That red die is pretty powerful. You can get 2 extra successes on that. It's not bad, I must say. He also would put the vulnerable state on the opponents with his switch with 2 specials as well. So he's highly likely to do that if you decide to stress it. So I'm just here to talk about vulnerable. Vulnerable is a state that you would put on your opponent, and so that when they roll a defense dice, any shields that they roll, you get to remove one of those dice. As one of those dice get removed, then the vulnerable state is taken away from them as well. Yeah, that's about it. So enjoy the rest of the video. He does only have a morale of 1, so you probably don't want to stress him too much. On his defense, he's rolling a blue and a black, which is pretty weak, so he's going to take wounds pretty fast, but at least he has 3 of them to make him a little bit harder to kill in that sense. His conquest value on his own is 0, so he's not going to be very good at contesting objective positions. However, if we actually put him in a unit of Orc Hunters, for example, he's going to give them an extra yellow dice for willpower, which is going to be really useful for them. They need those boosts. He's also going to give them +1 morale. So even though he only has 1 morale on his own, when he's joining another unit, he actually adds another morale. So that's going to give the unit 2 morale. That's a really nice little buff right there. He also adds an automatic success in close combat. You can also stress him to get that other buff as well. So you stress the unit to get that extra buff. And that becomes more of an option as you have an increased morale for the unit. So that's actually pretty cool. Also on the defense in a unit, he's going to add an extra shield. That's really nice just to make them a bit tougher. But also he's going to add 1 conquest value. That's pretty strong because now that's giving the unit a conquest value of 2, making them much better at contesting areas. So I don't know why you wouldn't put this guy in a unit. He seems to be so much stronger at buffing a unit and making them better across the board. So definitely someone that you're going to be adding to a unit. He's like almost like this special sergeant to lead the troops into battle. Now, when you attach him to a unit as well, he actually comes with a couple of extra abilities too. So one of them is actually a command ability. So you can use your commander's command tokens, and he has the voice of experience. So when your unit rolls attack or defense, fix the result of 1 die from your roll. So you can actually just choose the face of the die, which again is pretty good. So if you're rolling like reds, or you're rolling the green die, you can choose a die just straight off with, I'm going to have 2 successes, or I'm going to have 2 shields on that. And that's great. That's really super. Obviously, it's using a command token, so you can only do that so many times in a game, but it's there when you really need it. He also comes with a passive, which is Charisma and Wisdom. So your unit gains Fearless and may repeat their willpower rolls. Your unit may avoid being pushed back without suffering stress. So yeah, normally if you lose a combat and you decide to stay in that combat and not pull back, you have to take a stress token. But Wisemane prevents you from having to do that. So it allows you to kind of stick in the combat and continue fighting to try and push the enemy back as well. So pretty cool model. And I don't know why you wouldn't put him in a unit. For sure, he has to go in a unit. I think he's kind of useless solo. All right, next we've got the Evoker. The Evoker is basically the magic user for the Orcs, and the Orcs use a lot of this rock magic and like creating trolls and things like that. So with this evoker here, much like the hegemony magic user, he's got a pretty high willpower. This one is going to be 2 oranges and a yellow, so it's going to be very useful for casting your spells. He's also got 2 wounds, so he's a bit tougher to kill than the hegemony variant. And he's got a morale of 2, so he'll hold his own for a while before running away. Obviously availability 1. Now he's actually pretty good at close combat. He can roll 3 orange die, so he's not bad, you know. So if he does end up in a close combat, he can hold his own to some extent. One important thing as well is he actually comes with a command token, so he's going to add a command token to your army. His defense is a red and a black dice. Now this is kind of interesting because this means it's a very offensive defense. So when you're defending, you're rolling successes, not shields mostly, which is kind of an interesting approach. So he's going to take wounds fast. So if he is in close combat, I think he's going to fall fast, but he may do some damage back. Now he gets 2 spells that he can cast. One of them is Spirit of the Thermaplaris. Thermaplaris? Spirit of the Thermaplaris? Jesus, Corvus Belly, I can't stand your naming sometimes. It's so difficult for my tongue. This is basically one that has duration of 4 turns, and it targets an allied unit within 20 strides, so it's a pretty long range. The target then gains Intimidating 1. I'll have a little thing of me here just talking about what Intimidating is, because right now it's just gone out of my head. When a unit has Intimidating, whenever it engages an enemy unit, that enemy unit must roll a willpower test to avoid getting a stress token. The higher level Intimidating you have, the more successes the willpower test has to pass for it to avoid the effects of Intimidating. Okay, you can put Intimidating 1 on the unit, and it just makes them a bit scarier, I think, to the enemy. Also, if you want to risk the tinge, you can add a black die on the tinge face-to-face roll that you'll have, and any enemy unit stressed due to the target's Intimidating becomes demoralized and must flee immediately. That's pretty harsh, to be honest. Yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. So you can put this Intimidating that lasts for 4 turns on a unit, and then have them basically try and stress another unit through its Intimidating and just cause them to run away straight away, giving you, hopefully, objective control without anyone contesting you because you made them run away. Now, if you put 2 black die onto the tinge roll, the target unit will gain Intimidating 2. So it makes it so that when they do the Intimidating roll, I believe, they have to roll 2 successes to succeed. So that makes it a lot tougher to pass. Hence the high tinge cost there. Now the other ability they have is Summon the Rock. So the target enemy unit within 8 strides, and it's basically the ranged attack that the evoker has. He basically like does the Avatar thing of like pulling a rock out of the ground and force pushing it into the enemy. And it's a red, orange, yellow dice, so it's pretty offensive. It's going to hurt units pretty badly unless they can roll really well on their defense. He can also buff it with an extra range up to 14 strides, so the range gets pretty long there, but again the risk of adding more tinge. And then a big buff with 2 dice there. After resolving the attack, the spell gains the property Remains Active and adds the effect. The target and all enemy units within 5 strides from it receive the slowed state at the beginning of their activation. So you're basically kind of like in a whole area there, giving lots of units, possibly lots of units, the slowed state if they're all hunkered down together, slowing everyone down, allowing you to get map dominance, hopefully. In a particular situation, that could be very useful. But again, it costs a lot on your tinge. You're going to be risking your summoner in that sense. Now he also comes with a command ability as well, so Delegate of the Ancestors, and once during your activation, within 20 strides, reduce by 1 the stress of an allied orc unit, or a demoralized allied orc unit rallies automatically. That's pretty cool. So this is where you get a little bit of stress control in the army, where the hegemony have a lot of stress control through their characters. I don't think the orcs have that much. So you can imagine that the orcs are running on a lot of momentum, trying to win out on jewels and things like that to make sure that they stay in control of the field. I think if they start taking stress and they just start running, things kind of can fall apart for them fairly easily that way. This allows you to at least use a command token to try and reduce that possibility. That's kind of cool. Then we have the basic commander, Wrathmane. This one he's 30 points. He's a character with high command. He can join basically any orc infantry, and he's elite, so that means he can convert hollows into solids, which are pretty good on the symbols for the dice. He only has 2 command tokens, so the evoker thankfully will knock your army up to 3 command tokens, so that's good. But yeah, he actually only starts with 2. He has 5 wounds, which is a lot of wounds. Willpower of 2 orange is alright. Morale of 2 is okay. But his close combat attack has 2 reds, orange, and a yellow. It's pretty powerful. But what's kind of interesting is hollow success can be a switch to inflict 1 wound to your target. This is kind of interesting because although he has the elite ability allowing him to convert hollows into solid symbols, the advantage of actually having this switch means that you bypass any shields the opponent has. So if you had a bit of a sucky roll and you didn't have enough successes to get through their shields, if you have any hollows, you can actually just bypass the shield and do the damage with a hollow. That's pretty cool. Also for the hollow special, here the target receives the vulnerable state as well. So that's kind of cool switches. That's nice. On the defense, he's got a blue, blue, black. I think this is where you're probably going to see where elite comes in handy, where he can convert any hollow shields into regular shields here. Both of those abilities, the attack and the defense, will also have a buff to them if he wants to stress himself. So for the attack, he can get a hollow success and a special. I don't know really why you would want the special there, because the special doesn't really do anything as far as I can tell, because his switch is a hollow special and his elite doesn't allow him to change solids into hollows, I don't think. Anyway, yeah, there's that. The defense though, he can get a red dice and a success. So rather than buffing his defense, he just becomes more offensive in his defense whenever he's defending himself. So he just gets angry and starts punching things if they start hurting him. He has 1 command ability as well, which is once during his activation he can do Wrath Roar. An enemy unit within 10 strides receives the frightened and disarmed states. I'm going to need myself here to talk about those to tell you what they are. So basically the frightened state makes a unit re-roll their successful willpower roll. So if they were successful, they will lose the frightened state, but then they have to re-roll 1 more time. Disarmed is the same as vulnerable, except for attacks. So when you make an attack with a unit that is disarmed, they have to lose 1 of their dice that has successes on it, chosen by the opponent. That's it. Now, if we choose to put Wrathmane into a unit, he's going to give the unit a willpower of 2 orange die, and he's giving them a +1 morale. It's pretty good, not bad. On the attack, he just gives them an extra success, but he can also add that if the unit decides to stress themselves, he can also add the red and a success on that as well. Again, the hollow success will still inflict a wound to the target, and if he has a hollow special, he can actually displace the target, I think, by 3 strides. That's pretty cool, because you can like push things off of the objective if you're holding it. So very much rather than contesting objectives, I think the orcs are going to be trying to push people off of objectives as much as possible, push them away and then be holding it so that they score it that way. A little different from the hegemony, who are trying to just castle on objectives and out-conquest you. On the defense, he just adds a shield, and he can add a red die as well if you decide to stress the unit. And again, he still gets Wrath Roar, so an enemy unit within 10 strides from the unit will receive the frightened and disarmed states. No change there. I'm not sure if you really want to add this guy to your unit. I think Wrathmane is the guy that you're going to be sticking in a unit more so. Wrathmane, I think, works better actually as a loner in some respects, just taking on units by himself. He's got 5 wounds. He can definitely tank a bit more than anything the Hegemony have. So he's pretty cool that way. This brings us to the almighty Albork, the character version of the commander. This guy, wow, he's got 5 wounds as well. Same willpower, but this time morale of 3, so it's a bit stronger in that. He can join Orc units, but he can also join Varank units as well. So he's one of the Orcs who's created the alliance with the Varank, so he can actually join more units than Routhmane, which is pretty cool. He also has, for his attack, a red, orange, and a success. Now, there's a whole bunch of switches as well. So if he has 2 specials, he can cancel a shield from the target and add a success to his roll. That's pretty insane, because as long as you pull off that switch, you're reducing the enemy's defense and you're increasing your successes. That's nuts. The hollow special, the target receives the vulnerable state, and a hollow success, your target suffers 1 stress. So instead of doing a wound, you could decide to just put some more stress on the opponent, try and push them back some more. That's pretty cool. On the defense, he's got 2 blues and a black. Pretty standard fare. He has no conquest value, so he's all about just causing absolute chaos, killing things, pushing them back, and being the only thing there to contest, so that his value of 0 doesn't really mean anything. Because if he's the only one there, he's going to contest it. Now he's got 3 abilities as well. He's got the Warg and the Crow, which is a command ability, so he uses command token for this. This is once per round. At the end of the activation of an allied unit Orc, activate an allied unit Varank, and vice versa. The unit can only perform 1 action, it cannot be a long action, and it does not receive stress or activation token. Now, you can't do that with the starter set as it is, because there are no Varank in the starter set. However, once the Beyond set comes out, we're going to be having a Varank unit in there, so this is something where you will be able to use this command action. Luckily, these Orcs have a lot of command token use options throughout the army, so you'll be able to find other uses for your command tokens anyway. He's got 2 passives as well. There's a War Alliance, and so until the end of the scenario, the characters that can join Orc infantry units can also join Varank infantry and vice versa. This effect does not stop applying even if you join a unit or are eliminated from the battlefield. That's pretty cool. So yeah, this guy is created the War Alliance between the Orcs and the Varank, so he's allowing his characters in the army to basically intermingle between the Varank and the Orcs, when usually they might be only allowed to go purely Orc or purely Varank. So it allows them to mix and match a little bit, giving you a few more options in your unit compositions. He's also got Sword of the Sun. So while you have damage, you gain Dispel, where the Dispel, I guess, are as many blue as the damage suffered, to a maximum of 3. Plus you may add yellow to your attack and defense rolls. Cool. So if you are hurt, you get to dispel magic. That's pretty cool. Now, plus you may add yellow to your attack and defense rolls. I'm guessing that's just 1 yellow dice. As long as you've got a wound on you, you can add a yellow dice to your attack rolls and defense rolls. I don't think it means you get a yellow for every wound. That's not what it says. It's just as long as you're wounded, you'll get a yellow dice to add to your attack and defense rolls. Basically, he gets hurt, he gets mad. Okay, he gets a bit more smashy. Now, he can join a unit as well. He'll give the willpower of 2 orange, plus 1 morale. He'll just give 1 more attack, 1 more shield. And he has the Warg and the Crow ability. To be honest, him joining a unit is useless. Is worse than Routhmane. So I don't see why you would. This guy is all about running around by himself, causing as much mayhem and chaos as possible on the battlefield. And that's how you run the Northern Tribe here. So yeah, that's basically all of the Northern Tribe. I think these guys are going to be aggressive. They're going to be pushing hard. You're going to be just charging everything that you can. You'll want the first attacks in combat as much as possible so that you can win a combat and push the enemy back and just destroy them before they do damage to you. I can see the units in this army, if they're up against anything with perhaps ranged attacks, to have some weakness. So if there's an army with a lot of shooting troops, if they can't close that gap and get into combat, those ranged troops could probably pick off a lot of the orcs, considering a lot of their defense values are fairly offensive dice, which means, yeah, these guys are going to be vulnerable to ranged attacks for sure, certain members anyway. So it's kind of an interesting army. I think it's going to be very, very important how you activate them and in what order you activate your units. And you have to be very, very careful about stressing them, because there's not many ways to mitigate your stress. And as soon as these guys break, that could be a problem. Luckily, Wise Mane is there to kind of make them fearless, and the Evoker is there to spend command points to help reduce stress as well. They're the two things that you can do to mitigate those problems. But yeah, very cool looking army. What do you think? Do you think they're going to be good? I think they're going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to getting hold of the starter set and painting these guys, because I think it will be a lot of fun to paint some orcs. I haven't painted orcs for ages, so it'll be really, really good to do so. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe to the channel. That really helps me out, and I hope to see you in the next videos. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.